In this video, we're going to learn how to create functions and use them. So first of all, what is a function? A function is a block of code. Basically, we need functions to perform a specific task or operation. So rather than writing this block of code many times in our JavaScript code, we will just invoke the function whenever we need it. All right? So let's create a new file and call it functions.html and import the source code again from the previous file and change the title to functions. This deletes the script content to start from scratch again. Alright, so let's define our first function. So to define a function, we need to use a function, okay, and then a space, and we need a name for the function. Let's call our first function greeting1. Basically, right after the name, we need parentheses, so an open bracket and a close bracket, and after that we're going to need an open curly bracket and a close curly bracket. Alright, some functions, they will have some parameters between the parentheses, but for now we're going to use a function without parameters. Okay, so what we want this function to do, we just want to include one statement. Okay, we want a simple function, so we're just going to go window.alert hello. All right. So this is the definition of the function. So now if you want to use the function, we need to invoke this function. And the way to invoke the function is by using the name of the function. Okay. And depending on whether the function has got parameters or not, then inside the parentheses, we might need to include a parameter. In our case, there are no parameters needed. Okay. So let's try this. Okay, so now we can see the alert message saying hello, which means that the function has been executed. All right. Now let's try to use the name of the function alone without the parentheses and see what happens. Okay, we don't see anything. And now let's put this in an alerts message and see what we get. Okay, basically what we're getting here is exactly the definition of the function. Okay, which means that if we use the name of the function only, that means the objects of function only, and usually in an alert message it will just return exactly the definition that we put in our code. Okay, so the right way of using a function is, okay, so we added an extra semicolon, but anyway, we would have got the same, we will get the same result. So to use the function, we need the name of the function and we need the parentheses, and later on we will see how to use the parameters if the function needs parameters. Okay, so let's go for our second example. So I'm going to define a second function using function space name of the function, and let's call this one greeting2, and this time the function is going to need a parameter which we will call first name. And what the function is going to be doing, it's going to send an alert message. Okay, and in the alert message we're going to use the parameter. Okay, so you're going to say hello space, and then we're going to need to use our parameter first name, and then we need an exclamation mark after that. All right. So apparently, okay, we need a close brackets. Yeah. All right. So this is the definition of the function. Now let's invoke the function. So you're going to need to use the name of the function, and this time we do need a parameter. Okay, so you're going to need to use a parameter. It's a string in our case, and let's use, for instance, John. Okay, let's comment this line so that we don't invoke the first function. And now let's see what happens. So we just invoked the second function, and it's showing the alert message, which is exactly what we were expecting from this line of code. All right, so if we change John to any other name, then the alert message is going to change. Okay. All right, so now let's try something else. So you're going to try another type of function. Let's define a function that will take as parameters a couple of numbers, and it will return the sum of these numbers. Okay, so function, let's call it sum, and let's give it two parameters, a and b. Okay. So in this case, we're going to need to use a return. Okay. So the return means that the function's output is going to be whatever we're going to put after the return. Okay. So if we set a certain variable x to sum of 3 and 7, for instance, since the function is returning a plus b, which is going to be in our case 3 plus 7, which is 10, that means that the value of x is going to be 10. And let's verify that and use a window alert of x and see what we get. Let's just comment this one, control /. See, so basically we're getting 10. All right. Okay, now let's go for another example. So this time we want a function that will take a couple of parameters. So we want the function to take two strings, and these two strings, we want them to be IDs of certain HTML elements. And we want the function to swap the content of these two IDs, of these two HTML elements. All right. So we're going to go function. So first they just comment this for now. Okay. So let's name it swap. And it's going to have two parameters. So first one is ID1 and then ID2. And then curly brackets. And now we're going to define a variable that where we're going to store the content of the first element. Okay, so we're going to call it variable y, and inside y we're going to store the contents of the first element, which is the element of ID1. ID1, yeah. So we're accessing the inner HTML, okay, and we just set the value of y to the inner HTML of the elements of ID1, okay. And we're going to do the same thing with the variable z, which we will set to the inner HTML of the elements of ID2. Okay, and now we're going to set the inner HTML of ID2 to y, and the inner HTML of ID1 to z. Okay. get elements by ID, ID2. So this time the inner HTML is going to be set to Y, and if we just duplicate that using Control-D, change this to set and this to ID1. Okay. Okay. So now if we go to the couple of buttons that we have here, so let's say that we want this button to, when we click on it, we want to change or swap the content of Facebook and Apple. And the second button, we want to change or swap the content of Apple and Microsoft. Okay, so you're going to need to say in the onClick attributes, so we're going to invoke the function here. So we're going to use the name of the function, so swap, and the function needs a couple of parameters, the first ID and the second ID. So the first ID is Facebook, and it's a string. Second ID is also a string, so Facebook and Apple. We're going to need to give Microsoft an ID as well. And same thing, this button needs a onClick attribute, and we're going to invoke the function swap again. We've got a couple of parameters, and this time it's going to be Apple and Microsoft. All right, so let's try. Okay, it's not working. Something went wrong. The reason is because okay, so let's have a look at our console and see what went wrong. Okay, so basically we've got an error in line 62, and if we look at the function curly brackets, we close the brackets here. We're supposed to close it at the end of the block of code, so it's supposed to be there. So let's try again and refresh the page, and now if we try, so you can see that the first one is working. So you can see that's the Facebook div and the Apple div. They swap their content, and also let's try the second one. So it is working as well. All right. So so you can see how powerful functions can be. So they will avoid us a lot of effort and time as well. So all right. In the next video, we're gonna move to objects.